A tigress is giving birth for the first time in her life, and two little cubs are born. Sadly, one of them shows no signs of life, and at that moment, the mother's instincts come into full play. Sumatran tigers are on the verge of extinction, so the birth of each cub of this species is considered a true miracle by those who care. One fine day, a Sumatran tigress named Caitlin started her labor, watched with bated breath by almost the entire staff of the Australia Zoo. Caitlin was placed in a comfortable enclosure filled with straw, and by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she began to have strong contractions. Giles, who had raised Caitlin since she was a cub, stayed by her side, ready to help if needed. This was Caitlin's first labor, and the zoo staff wasn't sure if she was fully prepared for it. Giles and his 8 colleagues, watching through the video camera monitor, aimed to save the population of the extremely rare Sumatran tigers, and they were deeply concerned for Caitlin. Around 5 in the morning, a small cub emerged from its mother's womb. Unfortunately, the cub looked very weak and lifeless, and it seemed that its lungs barely opened to fill its blood with oxygen. The experienced specialists had seen this before and feared that the cub had very little chance of survival. They couldn't help it at all, just patiently waiting, unable to take their eyes off the monitor. The saddest part was that each saved cub is an important step toward preserving this rare tiger species, of which there are only about 500 left in the world. Sadly, this time, the very weak newborn cub seemed to be losing its harsh battle for survival. At a critical moment, Caitlin's motherly instincts kicked in. When human babies are born during difficult labor, the medical staff helps them breathe by cleaning their bodies of amniotic fluid and clearing their noses of any liquids. The midwives continuously rub the baby's neck and back to help their lungs start working. Caitlin crawled closer to the cub and began thoroughly licking its body. Then the tigress turned the cub over and licked its back in the same way. At that moment, people began to feel that not everything was lost, as the weak cub seemed to start breathing a bit more actively after its mother's actions. However, its battle for life was far from over. Suddenly, Caitlin looked at Giles with a puzzled expression, and then lay down on the straw again, leaving her struggling cub slightly to the side. About half an hour after the birth of the first cub, Caitlin brought another baby into the world. This time, Mother Nature was on the animal side. The second cub was born without much effort and looked quite healthy. The little ball of fur immediately began wriggling on the soft bedding, and the zoo staff sighed in relief, seeing that it was breathing on its own without any problems. When the cub squeaked in its thin voice, the team beamed with smiles, understanding that at least one cub would definitely survive today. After making sure that the second cub was all right, the tigress immediately returned to her weak sibling, who was still lying on the straw almost motionless. Caitlin continued to diligently lick the cub with her warm, rough tongue, turning it over several times in the process. The team had lost track of time, praying for the cub's life, when finally, Caitlin's methodical action succeeded, and her first cub started breathing more deeply and even began to move its thin little legs a bit. This was the decisive moment when people realized that the cub would survive, thanks to Caitlin's timely motherly instincts and care. Fortunately, everything ended well, and that very weak cub grew into a beautiful adult tiger, now proudly walking around its enclosure in the Australia Zoo.